Well, would you look at that? It's a nice sunset, isn't it? Kinda makes you want to sit and think about life. But why would I do that when I could think about video games? We all know, here, in the year of 2024, it is the sunset era for the Nintendo Switch. The Switch 2 is on the horizon, and although there have been some leaks about it, we really don't know much about what to expect from this upcoming console. Honestly, I kind of like that things are a little mysterious about Switch 2. I like the surprises that Nintendo gives us. Well, the positive surprises, at least. I think there's a reason why everyone loves to pile into the Nintendo Directs. There's a sense of magic and wonder with Nintendo announcements, and I'm really pumped to see what they have in store for the next console. But I think as we wait for that day to eventually come, we're kind of left with that question of what do we want the next console to be like? And that's a question that I sat on for a while now, and I really wasn't sure I had much of an answer until recently. When it comes to speculating about upcoming consoles, I found that personally, I never really cared what specifically the console did, so long as it did it well. I remember the push for consoles to be more than just gaming consoles, and while you could say that's something that's ongoing in the current day, I feel like we've all come to the conclusion that really, people just buy consoles for gaming purposes. And the driving point of what console people buy is what games are coming out. Because then why else have a console, right? That's a lesson I feel like this generation of consoles in particular had to learn, although I'm not sure some people have figured it out yet. I think when it comes to Switch 2, I find that I do have some particulars about what I'd like for it to have, which is kind of different from my usual passive take on things. Not super different, but a little different. I'm going to cover two main things in this video. The first section will be what I want the console itself to be like. The second section is what I want this generation of Switch to be like in terms of feeling and player base impact. Let's get started. What I would like from the Switch 2 console is honestly not super different than the average Joe Schmo. First up, we got backwards compatibility. This has been rumored to be true already, and I'm really hoping it is. I don't like having to shuffle my consoles around. My office space is actually quite limited in terms of how much I can have plugged in at the same time. It's just a nuisance to deal with, and I'd rather just be able to play my entire Switch library on the Switch 2. Better graphical power and high definition graphic capability. I want the games to look clearer and sharper than the games in the Switch's library. While I don't think the Switch looks bad per se, some of the games do suffer from backdrops looking really murky and just not as defined as they should be for a console of this generation. That being said, I'm not someone who really puts a huge amount of stock into a game's graphics. I regularly go back and play N64 and Super Nintendo titles all the time. Graphics don't make or break anything for me personally, but I do feel like we're at the point where we're starting to see ideas on Nintendo consoles that are beyond the graphical capability of what the console can do, especially for the production time given for some of these titles. Scarlet and Violet are both really good examples of this. Good ideas, but not enough time was given to those games to implement those ideas in an acceptable manner. And unfortunately, given that the Switch is not as powerful as other consoles in its generation, I think it just made things extra difficult, and that's why Scarlet and Violet have so many issues, not just it being graphically kind of boring, but also it stuttering really, really bad in some areas. Speaking of stuttering, I would like for the Switch to have a stable 60 frames per second. I feel like this is a very self-explanatory desire, and really I can forgive some stuttering, but I feel like the gaming industry has become a little too okay with stuttering in their recent releases, Nintendo included. You can't even load into the Splatoon 3 lobby without frame drops and pretty bad stuttering, which is pretty wild to me. So please, just a stable 60 frames. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Games. I want a good lineup for the Switch 2's release and just a good, solid amount of waves of releases following the Switch 2's release. I said it before, people buy consoles to play the games, and I want to believe that Nintendo has learned from the Wii U era. But I still worry sometimes. I still worry. I want a good release roster and just some good bangers that come in decently spaced waves after. They've been doing this with the Switch, so keep it up. And finally, I want them to invest in IPs that are struggling. The Nintendo Switch was actually the time to do that, and they were doing that a bit, but I'm hoping that mentality carries over to Switch 2. A lot of people are probably suspecting I will talk about Star Fox in this, and I mean, that is one IP that would benefit from a game with a high install base like the Switch. F-Zero as well is another one. Kid Icarus would be even another one I'd like to see them explore again, and I'd really like for them to do more with Donkey Kong. But obviously it seems like those series will not be seeing a game on the Switch, so we can just kind of hope that not only will the Switch 2 do well in terms of sales, but they'll also consider giving those IPs a chance. Metroid, Pikmin, and Paper Mario fans ate super well during the Switch's lifetime, and I'd like to see other smaller IPs afforded that opportunity. And here is what I don't want from Switch 2. I don't want Nintendo to try to reinvent the wheel. I feel like they hit their stride with the Switch, and they need to keep doing most of what they're already doing, just with a more powerful console. I feel like they shouldn't go too crazy with it. We don't need to reinvent gaming consoles every generation or every other generation, or make each new console a massive, weird, gimmicky departure from the last one. From what I have seen of the Switch 2's alleged appearance, because there was leaks about this a couple months ago, it seems like they aren't straying too far from the Switch's structure anyways, so that's a good sign. Going along with that, I want them to invest less in gimmicks in terms of software projects. I say software projects, but I really mean like all of the other strange projects that came with the Switch. I know this seems very against what Nintendo is about, but hear me out. Who actually got Labo? Who actually got Mario Kart Home Circuit? And if you did, how long did you actually invest in playing with those particular things? I feel like these products are too niche and the resources could just be spent elsewhere. Moving on. Most importantly from Switch 2, I want no Joy-Con drift. Please, for the love of God, just make the controllers work and make them work for a long amount of time. Please, I am begging. And now, what I want from Switch 2 in terms of impact and vibe. I really just want the Switch 2 to continue what the Nintendo Switch started. We went from a very low with the Wii U, and the Switch was such a 180 from those dark times. I really just want them to carry on this sort of energy. Everyone is always excited for the next Direct, and I think that says a lot. Everyone always wants to know what the next big title is gonna be. Everyone shares in a pretty powerful hype every time there's another Nintendo announcement. I just want that to continue. But, oh yeah, there's a but. I want Nintendo to earnestly reconsider its PR approach. I know, this is such a massive subject that's deserving of its own separate video, but I want the relationship between fans and Nintendo to just be better. Now, for the record, I don't think the relationship right now is bad, but I think there's a sort of leeriness. Nintendo is known for being pretty heavy-handed when it comes to DMCA strikes. And obviously, this is a major stressor for things like fan games, fan projects, the modding scene, ROM hacks, etc. I don't think Nintendo understands that a lot of these things they like to strike down are actually projects born from a love for these Nintendo franchises. And I get it. From a legal perspective, you do have to be careful about fan works causing confusion or maybe even misrepresenting your IP in a bad way so that people think that the fan work is legitimate and then it causes a huge problem, right? But I think we can all agree that Nintendo does often go too far with DMCAs. This is a very nuanced issue, and again, it's something so big that it deserves its own video. I don't really want to go too into my take on it in this video, but I just hope that there is a shift in the mentality that causes a more positive relationship to be fostered. I want a world where people can make fan games or fan projects and for those projects to not exist in a fear of a DMCA. It will require a complex fix, I think. Probably rules for those kinds of things, but the first step is, of course, getting Nintendo to even be open to something like that in the future. Now let's be clear. I don't think it'll change, but I hope for it all the same. Nintendo did come out with content creator rules for people like me who are on YouTube and Twitch making content using their games. I feel like while the chances are slim, there could be, in the future, FanWorks rules for things like fan games or even animations or comics. While some people might lament that rules can be stifling towards creativity, sometimes it's better to have rules in place so that you know where the line is. Again, this is a large issue that is very nuanced, but I hope that take at least makes some kind of sense. That about wraps it up in terms of what I'd like from the Switch 2. I feel like most of my hopes for it are pretty tame, honestly, but I still wanted to make this video anyways. I plan to, maybe a little bit closer to the Switch 2's announcement, do a prediction video for what I think we'll see during the announcement, as well as games that I think will be out on release. People keep saying it'll be soon, but we all know Nintendo does things at their own pace, and that's fine. I still have quite the mountain of videos to make anyways. Speaking of videos to record, I better go get on that. Actually, I've got a Splatoon one, and I have a weekly news segment thingy to also record, so I better get started on that too. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.